A lot of people are excited for Kamala Harris's candidacy, but not everybody is. Obviously, the right is not excited. Obviously, Trumpers are not excited. But there are people on the left who are also not excited, y'all. There are people on the left. And one group of those people are leftists. Y'all, leftists, I'm a left. It's so funny to argue with people that you share the same ideology with. I'm a leftist, okay? I am a leftist. But I gotta say, y'all, listening to y'all and your fatalistic, Kamala's a cop. Listening to y'all just is so freaking frustrating, especially white leftists and especially white male leftists. I just posted yesterday because I had a white male leftist come up in my FYP, and this motherfucker had the nerve to sit in his car, mind you, because that's where y'all be doing all this proselytizing from, and literally preach to people and tell people who were deciding to vote for Kamala that they were voting for Kamala because they believe that their rights are more important than the rights of people in Palestine. What the fuck kind of dumb shit is that? And I'm not surprised that came from a white man. Of course, you would think that way because your rights are not on the freaking line. It's our rights that are on the line. Your rights have not been affected at all in this last decade of turmoil. So of course you would say some dumb ass shit like that. And then he went on to literally scream into the camera, fuck you, multiple times. Fuck you to anybody who was voting for Kamala. Oh boy. Like I said in my post, I need white leftists, I need white male leftists especially to check themselves before they wreck themselves, okay? You have no freaking leg to stand on to be preaching to black and brown people about their votes. If you want to argue with other white people who have, not been participating like they should have been all of these years, go for it. More freaking power to you. But y'all better put a freaking disclaimer in your captions that you're not talking to BIPOC people. You're not talking to the black people whose rights are being trounced on in this country. How the fuck can we fight for other people's rights when we don't have our own freaking rights? See, people whose rights have not been affected would not understand that because they can't put themselves in other people's shoes. Walk a mile in these Louboutins. Shout out to Iggy Azalea. Not really. Not really at all. Fuck you. So I had to give him a little dressing down. You can check that out on my TikTok. And a lot of people jumped in the comments, but it's like, listen, I respect your desire to vote your conscience. I am a leftist as well. I do not support genocide. And I respect having political deal breakers when it comes to candidates. I think we should all have political deal breakers when it comes to candidates. And I think genocide is a legitimate political deal breaker. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but you have some goddamn nerve to be sitting here cursing people out on the internet because they've decided to choose differently under these circumstances. You have some freaking nerve, especially a lot of y'all motherfuckers who just showed up to the fight. We've been sitting here in the trenches fighting for the liberation of Palestinians since way before October 10th. Nobody was talking about Palestine on October 8th. Black women have been standing 10 toes down for Palestine since Palestine started. Since the Nakba, okay? We've been standing 10 toes down. In the civil rights movement, they were talking about Palestine. We've been saying free Palestine for decades now. You want to know when I started freaking boycotting Starbucks? In 1999. 25 years ago. Some of y'all motherfuckers weren't even born 25 years ago. And I've been freaking protesting Starbucks since then. Y'all just woke up. You just lifted the veil. And now you think that you have the right to talk down to people and turn your nose down at people who have the boots of patriarchy, capitalism, and white supremacy on our neck? I noticed a lot of this is coming from young people as well. You know, a lot of, early 20s folks. And look, I'm going to give y'all grace because we all have to go through this process. When you're younger, especially, and it doesn't, it still happens as you get older, but when you're younger, especially in your 20s, when you have these kinds of consciousness shifts and you start to wake up and you realize like, oh, I don't want things to be like this, or I don't like that, or I want them to be like this instead. A lot of times what happens is you end up going to the opposite extreme, because you don't know better. So for example, you might decide like, I'm tired of being a people pleaser. I don't want to be a people pleaser anymore. And so what you end up doing is you go to the opposite extreme, and now you just be saying no left and right. And you're like rigid and vigilant about saying no, 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 no. And then what happens is after a while, you realize like, oh, okay, I don't need to be so freaking extreme on this side either. I got to find a little freaking balance. I got to find the midway point. That's what happens. That's what you experience with life experience. And you realize that you don't have to swing from being the opposite extreme on one end to the opposite extreme on the other end. And you can find balance. And so when I see this type of behavior, and I see all this talk amongst young people, the youth, I give y'all grace, because I had to learn the hard way too. I'm not gonna lie, I had my rigid moments too, which is why I'm not hating on y'all if you decide that this is your line in the sand. I've had my rigid moments too, so I wanna give y'all that space to have your rigid moments, but I want you to understand big picture. Big picture, a lot of this is rooted in the fact that y'all don't have much life experience. And the life experience that you have has taught you that things can happen in a blink of an eye. We had COVID go down, and we saw how the government could suddenly just change things in 5 seconds, how the government could suddenly just send out freaking checks overnight, how the government could suddenly just stop forcing people to pay rent. And the youth, especially, who that was their formative years, they saw that and they were like, oh, the government can just do things instantly. Y'all weren't here before, when everything would be rolled out over 10, 15 years. Y'all weren't here before, when everything was bureaucratic red tape. Everything took forever to change in this country. We have been moving at warp speed, and y'all don't realize that because you haven't been around long enough to know what it was like before. We're still arguing over a $15 minimum wage. You know when that freaking argument started? In the freaking 90s, bro. We've been talking about $15 minimum wage for the last 20 years. Y'all have to understand, with life experience, you understand that things don't happen like that. It's just not the way it works. There is a process to things. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out process, but there is still a process to things. And what happens is, when you live long enough, you've had enough fucking doors smashed in your face to recognize that you need to tamp down your expectations and learn how to compromise and meet people in the middle and try to work on things where you can see eye to eye with people. You don't have to agree with people on everything. I believe in coalition building.